Hi everyone, my name is Justin Kompf and I'm an exercise scientist with a PhD in health sciences. And I've spent my career studying how physical activity can change our health and also our lives. I also work with Weight Watchers to make fitness more accessible and evidence-based for people at every stage of their lives. Now, today we are going to get into something that affects millions of women, but it's not always given the attention that it deserves, and that's menopause and exercise. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to break down the latest science on how both resistance training and aerobics, we'll also get a little bit into step counts too, can improve or reduce symptoms. It can also improve health and just make sure that you feel the best. And don't worry, I'll make sure that I'm explaining all the scientific jargon, leaving you with the knowledge and the tools needed to take that all and put it into practice. Let's start with talking about resistance training. We'll cover first symptom relief. So studies show that resistance training can actually reduce both the frequency and severity of hot flashes. And in fact, one research study said that many women report that as a motive for starting to do things like resistance training. Resistance training also improves sleep, lowers anxiety, as well as depression. And one study even found that women felt more hopeful and less negative after doing consistent training. So lifting weights doesn't just necessarily change your body, we'll talk about that too, but it can change your mood as well. Actually, that's one of the immediate benefits of engaging in most types of exercise is improvements in mood. Now let's go ahead and talk about metabolic health benefits. So resistance training can, to a modest degree, reduce body fat, but probably more importantly, it can improve things like cholesterol, triglycerides, and also blood sugar. It also reduces inflammation. So kind of just think of inflammation as your body's basically internal alarm system. When you lift weights, you actually create acute inflammation. So in small doses, it's not that bad. Actually, your inflammation goes up when you're sick too. It's chronic inflammation that is problematic as that increases your risk for chronic conditions like cardiovascular disease. One key marker for inflammation, if you've ever gotten blood work, you might have actually seen this. It's called C-reactive protein, or CRP. And typically the higher your CRP, the more inflammation you have in your body. And resistance training helps to lower that level, lower CRP. The closer it is to zero, the better. And the more total kind of training volume you do, likely the more improvement. Now I want to get into another important resistance training concept, and that is total training volume. Total training volume is just all the work that you're doing. Think of it as the number of sets you do, times the reps that you do, times the weight that you do. So for example, if you did 3 sets of 10 reps with a squat with 50 pounds, that's 30 total reps. 50 pounds, that's 1,500 pounds of training volume. If you continue to add all the exercises that you do, that's your total training volume. So for postmenopausal women, higher training volumes lead to better improvements in things like glucose, inflammation, and also can help to prevent weight gain. Let's get into bone health too. This is going to be something that's really, really important. After menopause, the loss of bone mineral density speeds up. That increases the risk for osteoporosis and then things like fractures. So resistance training, this is probably one of the best things it can do. It increases bone mineral density, which is basically how strong and thick your bones are. Now, heavier compound lifts, so things like squats and deadlifts, walking with heavy weight too, is of course in a safe way, signals your bones to rebuild and get stronger. And so resistance training alone can really improve and protect bone mineral density. In some cases, just as well, if not slightly better than hormone replacement therapy. So another thing to consider is that not everyone, this might be obvious, not everyone responds to the same stimuli in exactly the same way. So some women who are insulin resistant, which just means their bodies don't use insulin effectively to move glucose from the blood into the muscles. Basically, when that happens, it's like having a key that doesn't quite fit the lock. It makes it harder to control blood sugar. People that are insulin resistant, think like type 2 diabetes, they may need a little bit more of that stimulus in order to see the same gains. And in fact, people that are type 2 diabetic, they're actually at increased risk for muscle loss. So if you do have insulin resistance training is going to be really important, and you might need a little bit more. So let's actually get into a practical recommendation for resistance training before we start to talk about aerobic exercise. What's this actually going to look like? So what you're going to want to aim for, and I'll explain this concept, is about 70% of your maximum. So if you can lift 100 pounds on a goblet squat for one repetition, that's your 1 rep max. So 70% of that is 70 pounds. So what you're gonna wanna do is aim for about 70%. If you're just getting started, don't worry about these numbers. Be consistent first, of course. Once you're consistent, you're in a routine, technique feels good and everything like that, then please consider working in those ranges and progressively increasing the amount of weight that you're lifting over time. That's actually a really important part. I would aim for training at least 3 times per week, doing strength training, working up to, something like 60, 70 total sets across those workouts, which is like, about 8 workouts per session, doing 3 sets or 8 exercises per session, and then doing about 3 sets of each of those. I would be sure to practice technique, learn how to do things like squats, deadlifts, overhead presses, and loaded carries. Those are going to be good for bone remodeling, of course. And then one thing that you might also want to consider, if you can safely tolerate it, is impact work. So even walking is impact work, but that might be things like heel drops, coming up on your toes, dropping down to your heels. You'll actually see some of these in the videos that we'll end up producing, or some of the things that are on my channel already. All right, let's get into aerobic work. And that's just, resistance training is only part of it. A lot of people ask me, hey, what should my routine look like? And the best routine is going to be one that includes aerobics and strength training. So after menopause, estrogen levels drop. Estrogen is very cardioprotective, so it helps protect the heart. When that drops, things like blood pressure, cholesterol, and abdominal fat go up, and aerobic exercise can really help with that. So we'll talk about kind of what this exercise prescription is going to look like. What we can do is also kind of think about exercise intensity. There's a lot of different ways that you might have seen this explained, like different zones of training, but let's just do like light, moderate, and vigorous to keep this simple. So light would be kind of, you can walk, you can talk, you can say, you could even saying it's not that intense. Moderate would be kind of more like your brisk walking, cycling, where you could still talk. Whereas vigorous, it's becoming really hard. This could be fast running, fast cycling. So research shows that intensity, or moderate intensity specifically, actually everything that I've seen is light to moderate intensity is probably what is the best for women that are postmenopausal. Kind of the caveat there is that they haven't really done too much research into vigorous aerobics, and I definitely think there's a benefit to working up to that. It just, we don't necessarily have the evidence just yet. And so what you should probably aim for in terms of light to moderate is 150 minutes per week. At least do that. That improves blood pressure, cholesterol. It can improve your waist size as well as glucose regulation. What you might want to consider too is that higher volumes, even up to 300 minutes per week, are probably going to be even better. As a matter of fact, 300 minutes per week is associated with weight loss maintenance too. Also consider walking. So if you can start out by walking most days for 30 minutes, that's great. You might want to consider looking at your step count as well. 10,000 is a really good goal. There might be some benefit to doing a little bit more and going beyond. With all of these things too, always take stock of where you are presently at and just make small changes over time. It might take you a year to get up to there. No problem. I'd rather people steadily increase in their volume of both walking, aerobic exercise, and then strength training, rather than doing too much too quick, burning out, and potentially injuring themselves. All right, so let's wrap this all up. Resistance training and aerobic exercise is going to be an important and powerful combination during menopause. So lifting weights helps with hot flashes, mood, metabolism, bone strength. And aerobic training also helps with heart health, fat loss, and energy. It also has been shown to not necessarily reduce the frequency of hot flashes, but the severity of those hot flashes. Like I said, start with what you can manage, particularly with resistance training. Focus on good form. Gradually increase, your weight or the number of sets or the frequency. Try to walk regularly. Reduce that sedentary time if you can. Over time, you will start to see some changes, improvements in your blood work, improvements in your bone mineral density, visceral fat as well. You might want to consider looking into getting things like a DEXA scan. That might even just be for you, something that you do annually or biannually, just so that you can end up getting those results. So hopefully you found this video to be helpful. If you feel like it would be beneficial for other people, feel free to share it, feel free to subscribe. I would love to hear in the comments what other questions you have.